Hi mathematicians, today we're going to learn how to solve equations using square root. In our last video, we learned how to solve equations by using the inverse. We said the inverse of plus is minus and vice versa, and the inverse of multiply is divide, the inverse of divide is multiply. Today we're going to learn about one more. The next one we're going to learn about is square and square root. So square means we're multiplying a number by itself. And square root means we're finding what number can we multiply by itself to equal this number. So let's do an example. Determine the value of a that satisfies a squared equals 25. So we want to find what number times itself gives us 25. Well, 5 multiply 5 equals 25. Now also note that -5 times -5 equals 25 positive. Negative multiply negative is a positive number. So -5 squared is 25 and 5 squared is 25. So there are two different answers for this equation. And if we look at a graph, if I put in my calculator y1 a squared, or I can't put a, so I put x, and in y2 I put 25 because that's my equation. And if I look at the graph, I see there are two intersections. That means there are two solutions, one at +5 and one at -5. Now, we tried to come up with some number that would give us 25. Now we can also use the inverse operation, which is what they'll want to see on the exam. So anytime you have square, you need to put square root as the inverse. Now whenever we do square root, we always have to do plus or minus. So we're going to get a, the square and the square root cancel, equals plus or minus square root of 25. Now we can also figure out what the square root of 25 is using our calculator. So if I go back to the regular screen, if I press second x squared, notice how it has the square root symbol at the top. That tells us use the second key to get to it. And then I put in 25 and enter, it will give me 5. So I get a equals plus or minus 5, which is what we saw here. Now mathematicians are lazy and we don't want to write a equals 5, a equals -5. So we just put them together as a equals plus or minus 5. But it does mean that there are two solutions, a +5 and a -5. Let's do one more example. Find solutions to 7 equals y squared. So our variable here is y, on the right-hand side this time. And with the y is square. So the inverse of square is square root. So I'm going to square root both sides. And whenever I do square root, I have to put plus or minus. And here the square and the square root cancel. We just left with y. So now I can put it in my calculator. Second x squared, 7. And this gives me a really long number. This is an irrational number that doesn't ever really end. We can only see a certain amount of the number on the calculator, but this number goes on forever. So if we have an irrational number, we're just going to leave it in the square root. Okay, so we have two solutions here, plus square root of 7 and minus square root of 7. And we're just going to leave it like that. If they asked you to round it to the nearest tenth, Then you could write the number we got in our calculator. An tenth would be 1 decimal place. So that would be 2.6, and 4 is small, so we keep it as 2.6. So that would be plus or minus 2.6 equals y. But usually, you should leave it in this exact form. I hope this helps you understand how to solve equations with square root, and good luck on your practice.